Tonight, Donald Trump's alarming threat to acquire Canada.
Canada and the United States, that would really be something.
Erasing the border with, quote, economic force.
You get rid of that artificially drawn line.
The Prime Minister fires back, not a snowball's chance in hell.
Do you think he's serious?
I think he's very serious.
Troll or negotiating tactic. We break down how Canada should respond. And the race to replace Trudeau takes shape.
I'm seriously considering that.
More senior Liberals test the waters. Tens of thousands flee fast-moving wildfires in the hills around LA. Winds described as life-threatening and expected to intensify.
From CBC News, this is The National with Chief Correspondent Adrian Arsenault.
Thanks for joining us. A blunt response from federal leaders tonight to an escalating threat from the U.S. president-elect. Donald Trump saying he is prepared to annex Canada through economic force.
Good evening, sir. Mr. Trump is saying he wants to take over the country economically. What do you think?
So no comment from the embattled prime minister, but he did write strong words on social media saying not a snowball's chance in hell to Trump's bombastic suggestion the U.S. would take over Canada. Well, Trump's comments came during an hour-long, wide-ranging, often rambling press conference at Mar-a-Lago. As Katie Simpson shows us, it's the furthest Trump's ever pushed this notion of making Canada the 51st state, a notion that not long ago Ottawa considered a joke.
Donald Trump is making it crystal clear. He is not joking about Canada becoming the 51st state.
Canada and the United States, that would really be something. You get rid of that artificially drawn line, and you take a look at what that looks like, and it would also be much better for national security.
While admitting he has no right to do it, he said he'd use economic force to merge the countries, voicing his frustrations over U.S. defense spending and how much it costs to help protect Canada, while also making exaggerated complaints about the trade deficit.
But why are we supporting a country, $200 billion plus a year? Our military is at their disposal. All of these other things, they should be a state. That's why I told Trudeau when he came down. And I said, that's okay to have if you're a state. But if you're another country, we don't want to have it.
Trump also made multiple threats to upend the Canadian economy, reaffirming his commitment to punishing tariffs on Canadian goods and saying there's no need for Canadian auto exports, dairy products, or lumber.
And we want to get along with everybody, but, you know, they have to, it takes two to tango.
I think a lot of this might be Donald Trump ringing the doorbell of our northern neighbors and letting them know that he is back in charge.
But Trump's comments are part of a broader push for U.S. expansionism. In addition to questioning Canadian sovereignty, he called for the Gulf of Mexico to be renamed the Gulf of America. He wants to annex Greenland, the sovereign Danish territory, and take control of the Panama Canal. Trump refusing to rule out using military force to do so.
I'm not going to commit to that now. It might be that you'll have to do something.
Donald Trump's eldest son was dispatched to Greenland on a fact-finding mission.
Just here as tourists, seeing it, looks like an incredible place. We've been talking about going for a while.
Arriving at the airport hours before his father renewed his threat.
People really don't even know if Denmark has any legal right to it. But if they do, they should give it up because we need it for national security. That's for the free world.
Trump said so many things at this news conference that really anything could be pulled to make a significant headline. A mix of policy announcements and misinformation. It's a return to the fire hose of stuff that he is just so known for.
So yeah, Katie, even by Trump's standards, this news conference absolutely was remarkable.
Yeah, and on Canada, Trump's rhetoric has now crossed that line from humiliating jokes to unwelcome and even hostile threats. And remember, he's not yet the president. He'll return to the White House less than 2 weeks from now.
All right, Katie Simpson reporting from Washington tonight. Thanks, Katie.
Thanks.
Now, Canada's response to this latest threat from Trump is clear. As Marina von Stackelberg shows us, politicians of all stripes are sending the same message. The aggression is unwelcome, and Canada will not give up its sovereignty.
The already frosty relationship between Canada and the U.S. getting even colder after Donald Trump doubled down on his threat to take over Canada.
Because Canada and the United States, that would really be something.
The day after Justin Trudeau announced he would step down, he used social media to fire back, writing, "There isn't a snowball's chance in hell that Canada would become part of the United States." Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre posted, "Canada will never be the 51st state, period. We are a great and independent country."
The Premier of Ontario.
Ontario's Premier made Canada's case directly to Americans on Fox News.
What's your problem with the United States absorbing Canada?
Well, first of all, Jesse, you know, I love the U.S., I love Americans, and I get it. You know, President-elect Trump is a real estate tycoon. He's made billions, but that property's not for sale.
A different tactic from the federal Liberal Party, Humor, posting this clarifying map, which appeared to elicit this response from the president-elect. Canadians trying to make sense of it all.
Do you think he's serious?
I think he's very serious.
He says all kind of weird things, so I think it's just better to relax a bit and start negotiating when it's time.
What would you say to him?
Yikes, that's scary. I'm not sure what economic force he would use.
To me, what he's saying is economically, Canada would be not able to survive without the U.S., and he wants us to react to that.
Former diplomats say this could be a negotiating tactic.
And the bottom line is determine what it is the president-elect is actually trying to accomplish, because it's not clear.
With this latest threat from Trump, Canada's premiers and the Prime Minister have now set a date. They will meet here in person next week. Marina von Stackelberg, CBC News, Ottawa.
Now, all this just as that other major political story grips the country, the Prime Minister's impending resignation. The Liberal caucus meets tomorrow, and the party is working out the details of a leadership race. But as Ashley Burke explains, a new leader may not be a cure-all.
Evening, sir.
Justin Trudeau's back at work, but not for long. The Liberal Party's figuring out how to replace him and who will run for the job.
I'm seriously considering that. Otherwise, I don't think we'd be sitting here talking about that today.
But can a new face pull the party out of a deep hole?
What I would hope to see is somebody who can bring that fight and that energy back to the Liberal Party in time for another election.
The Liberals have 76 days to complete a leadership campaign and prepare for an election likely this spring, all while trailing far behind the Conservatives in the polls.
At this stage, we're not seeing anybody who is so popular that, or so well known that they would immediately reverse the fortunes and really put some turbocharge into the Liberal Party's prospects.
Anybody who's new is going to be changed, and that gives you a potential to turn things around.
Trudeau's former pollster says leadership campaigns create excitement, but it has to last.
It is true that a leadership change will cause voters to take a second look at the Liberal Party, but it's not a guarantee this is going to turn things around for the Liberals. It's not a magic potion.
He points to the U.S., where Kamala Harris enjoyed a surge in momentum when she replaced Joe Biden, but faced a bruising defeat. And it's happened throughout Canadian history, too, including after Trudeau's father took his famed walk in the snow. John Turner's time in office was short-lived.
If they can actually show a positive vision that connects with people, Liberals will be right back to where they are today under a new leader.
Whoever the Liberals choose, if they don't win this year's election, they could become the shortest-serving Prime Minister in the country's history. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
Trudeau's announcement has opposition parties shifting their strategies as they head into what could now be a spring election campaign. Kate McKenna takes a closer look at how the Conservatives are fine-tuning their message.
He's been Prime Minister for 9 years.
Until now, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has had one main target.
Justin Trudeau, who egomaniacally holds on to power. Justin Trudeau is a weak leader who has lost control of spending. Justin Trudeau is finally leaving.
With Trudeau's resignation, the Conservatives will face another Liberal leader in this year's election.
Nothing has really changed in terms of what the Liberal Party will be offering Canadians.
Conservative House Leader Andrew Scheer says his party's ready to take on any Liberal.
Canadians didn't get tired of looking at Justin Trudeau's face. It's not like they got sick of his voice. They're suffering under his policies.
About a dozen Liberals are rumored to be interested in the leadership. A Conservative source says they'll look to highlight the closeness between Trudeau and the leadership contenders, like what he said about former Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland yesterday.
Chrystia has been by my side for close to 10 years now.
Poilievre has already started branding potential leadership candidates as just like Justin.
I think, quite frankly, the Conservatives don't really care who the Liberal leader is. Virtually all of them have been an enabler of Justin Trudeau and his agenda over the past 9 years.
And with Parliament suspended until March 24th, expect Poilievre to be back on the road, meeting voters months ahead of an election.
I asked my assistant today how many events we had done over the last year, and he said it was exactly 600.
It's a great opportunity to get out, meet voters, communicate that message, and really crisscross the country, courtesy of the government's prorogation.
Conservatives have consistently pulled well ahead of the Liberals and other parties. They're eager to help trigger an election as quickly as possible. Kate McKenna, CBC News, Ottawa.
Justin Trudeau will be among the leaders at the state funeral for former U.S. President Jimmy Carter.
Ready, step.
Carter's casket is now at the U.S. Capitol building, where it will lie in state until Thursday. Trudeau will travel to Washington to attend Thursday's funeral service. Jimmy Carter died last week at the age of 100. Now to some breaking news. Tens of thousands of people are rushing to flee a fast-moving wildfire in the hills just west of Los Angeles. The governor of California has now declared a state of emergency for the area. Can you hear the intensity of that fire? It is burning fiercely tonight, fanned by powerful wind gusts, stronger than Southern California has seen in a decade. Homes in Pacific Palisades have already burned. Aaron Collins shows us the race to get out as the fire gets worse.
Wildfire smoke once again rolling over the hills of Southern California. Of course, the flames are back too. Burning homes, forcing thousands of residents in this affluent LA suburb to get out again, a dance they know all too well.
We have seen that before, so nothing new to us for the last 32 years that I've been here. We have everything in the car, you know, the silverware, the money, the passport, and everything ready to go.
But leaving easier said than done. Residents forced to abandon their cars and flee on foot.
Can I just leave my car right there? Where's your car? The cop saying you have to leave, and I leave my car right there because... So, what happened? There's a lot of fire right there.
Some evacuees separated from loved ones as they rush to get out.
The evacuating is really very difficult, and 3 miles up the hill, they didn't know if they get stuck in traffic or not. So here we are separated, but we're in communication by phone.
Even the president unable to take off. Air Force One grounded in LA by the fires. The flames here driven by winds topping 160 kilometers per hour, a gale strong enough to blow over a semi. And those winds aren't expected to stop blowing anytime soon.
This is like right at my doorstep. So, guys, I love you, but pray. Yeah. I'm praying, but God doesn't stop this wind.
Well, firefighting in this part of the world seemingly never ending these days. There were more than 8,000 wildfires in California in 2024. This fire, the first significant one of 2025, won't be the last. Aaron Collins, CBC News, Calgary.
A rescue operation is underway tonight around the Himalayas. A powerful and deadly earthquake rocked a remote region of Tibet. Cam McIntosh shows us the moment it happened and the desperate search for survivors.
This shows precisely when the earthquake struck. Registering magnitude 7.1, it flattened buildings, killing more than 120 people injuring many more. Numbers likely to increase as searchers scour for survivors.
Yeah, I felt it, yeah. And everyone in my home and around the neighborhood felt it.
This aid worker in Kathmandu says it's hard to fully evaluate the damage.
If there are other shaking or aftershocks are there, there might be more damages that can potentially happen.
More than 150 aftershocks have hit already. The epicenter was near a remote and sparsely populated area, close to the border with Nepal, about 80 kilometers north of Mount Everest, where this climber felt the mountain shake.
I saw many avalanches coming down, seracs collapsing, big chunks of glacier exploding.
The quake destroyed buildings more than 180 kilometers away. Tibet is an autonomous region of China. The Chinese government has sent 1,500 rescue workers. Tibet's exiled leader, the Dalai Lama, issued a statement that he was saddened by the devastating earthquake and loss of life. The quake's remoteness making it difficult to assess the full damage in an area simply not built to withstand earthquakes.
So the risk still remains. The structures there are still very vulnerable.
People are really worried about this.
In Canada, the Tibetan and Nepali communities are watching closely. 10 years ago, the area was hit by another massive earthquake. Ashish Mishra lived through it. He is busy now checking in with family.
We're keeping our fingers crossed. We don't want lots of casualties, but I think that's inevitable.
It will likely take days to be certain. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Tibet is uniquely vulnerable to seismic activity. Andrew Chang will be here a little later to break down why that is and why the search and rescue efforts are so complicated. Well, Elon Musk has launched an online smear campaign against the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer.
His goal seems to be to destabilise the British government.
The false claims he's spreading about a dark chapter in UK history. Next. Plus, does Donald Trump really want to annex Canada?
Canada and the United States, that would really be something.
Is this a negotiating tactic or something more? Our panel will break that down. And later, a picture-perfect moment lost in time.
She cried a lot of happy tears, and then she was just beside herself with joy.
A BC couple finally gets their wedding shots more than 5 decades later. We're back in 2.
Puff the magic dragon, live by the sea.
American singer and songwriter Peter Yarrow has died. In the 60s, he was part of the hugely popular Peter, Paul and Mary folk group. The trio had multiple Billboard Top 40 hits, including this one, Puff the Magic Dragon. They also performed at the famed 1963 March on Washington for Civil Rights. Peter Yarrow was 86. Well, Elon Musk continues to bash world leaders on his social media platform X, and recently he's taken aim at Canada, France, Germany, and Britain. As Chris Brown shows us, this comes as global governments brace for Donald Trump's return to the White House.
Take over, Elijah.
Not content with having the ear of incoming U.S. President Donald Trump, tech gazillionaire Elon Musk is now on a tear trying to disrupt politics in Europe, especially Britain. In social media posts, Musk has repeatedly smeared Prime Minister Keir Starmer, saying he should be jailed, and wrongly accusing him of being complicit in mass rapes when he was the country's chief prosecutor.
We've seen this playbook many times. Whipping up of intimidation and threats of violence, hoping that the media will amplify it.
Musk has inflamed an ugly chapter of recent UK history where thousands of children were sexually exploited by gangs of mostly British Pakistani men. An inquiry in 2022 found fault with local authorities, but not Starmer. The head of that probe says victims want action to fix the system, not distractions.
Certainly been very unhappy about the politicisation
of child sexual exploitation and child sexual abuse in the way that many people, sometimes in a very uninformed way, have waded into the argument.
This veteran political watcher says the intervention by the world's richest man into British politics is unprecedented.
His goal seems to be to destabilise the British government, but also, I think, to emphasise to Donald Trump that this is not an administration that he wants to be friends with.
And it's not just Britain. France's president claims Musk is interfering in elections, including siding with Germany's far-right party. But for Starmer and other European leaders, firing back at Musk comes with risks. As one of Donald Trump's most influential advisors, offending him could turn the incoming U.S. president against them as well. Chris Brown, CBC News, London.
Facebook and Instagram owner Meta is ending its third-party fact-checking program in the U.S., but the changes won't apply in Canada for now. CEO Mark Zuckerberg says the U.S. election was a cultural tipping point towards prioritizing speech and that the fact-checkers were politically biased. He says Meta will adopt a community notes model similar to the one on Elon Musk's platform X, allowing users to flag posts as potentially misleading. And a ceremony in Paris today marked a decade since the deadly Charlie Hebdo attack. French President Emmanuel Macron laid a wreath near the site to commemorate the 12 victims. In 2015, 2 al-Qaeda-linked gunmen stormed offices of the satirical magazine. They sought retribution for cartoons mocking the Prophet Muhammad. The attack ignited a debate about press and religious freedom across France. Well, tuberculosis is on the rise in some Canadian cities.
This is really how TB has spread historically all over the world.
What's driving the increase and what can be done? Plus, Donald Trump keeps saying he wants Canada to join the United States.
You get rid of that artificially drawn line, and you take a look at what that looks like.
How seriously should Canadians take those threats? And a search for survivors after a major earthquake in Tibet.
They're more easily to collapse, and that just causes much more devastation.
Andrew Chang on why the region is so vulnerable. The National breaks down the stories shaping our world. Next. Near Montreal, a cargo ship stuck in the St. Lawrence River since Christmas Eve was successfully refloated today. The ship initially ran aground due to a power failure. This was the second attempt at freeing the vessel, and it worked thanks to those tugboats. Well, health officials in Montreal are seeing a concerning spike in tuberculosis cases. It's not the only Canadian city seeing an increase. Jennifer Yoon on what's behind it.
Tuberculosis, maker of orphans.
Tuberculosis may seem like a disease of a bygone era. But new data suggests it's a modern problem in Canada. Toronto saw over 350 confirmed cases last year. Montreal now reporting a sharp increase in cases, about 200 last year alone. It typically averages 120. Most patients were exposed abroad.
This is really how TB has spread historically all over the world, and this reflects really large numbers of people who've come in, particularly as refugees or refugee claimants, in the last couple of years.
TB is an airborne disease. It can live in a person's body for years, even decades, without causing any symptoms. But when the bacteria wakes up, symptoms can include a bloody, hacking cough and weight loss. Worldwide, TB is the top infectious disease killer, though TB-related deaths are rare in Canada.
TB likes crowding, TB likes food insecurity, TB likes poverty. So where I work in northern Saskatchewan, we've actually had really high rates now for several years.
Inuit communities in Canada's north also see high rates. From the 1940s to the 1960s, many families were forcibly separated and taken south for TB treatment. And rebuilding trust in public health officials can be challenging, especially with record numbers of cases in some regions.
It's about 100 times the average of other regions in Quebec. And if we compare
to certain kinds of populations. For instance, non-Indigenous Canadian born, now we're talking about 1,000 times greater than those populations.
Doctors say it's important to remember TB is curable with medication, preventable with vaccines, and can be eradicated. Jennifer Yoon, CBC News, Montreal.
Now it's time to dig deeper into the stories shaping our world. Dozens dead after a powerful earthquake rattles Tibet. With an urgent mission to find survivors, we break down the region's seismic vulnerability. But first, Donald Trump's escalating rhetoric against Canada. Negotiation tactics only, or is there a higher threat when he muses about the 49th parallel?
Canada and the United States, that would really be something. You get rid of that artificially drawn line, and you take a look at what that looks like.
In a moment, we'll look at what Trump is doing and how Canada might respond. But first, the words he's using less than 2 weeks before his inauguration. Here's Ellen Morrow.
Canada and the United States, that would really be something.
Not since the War of 1812 has a U.S. leader seemed so keen on taking over Canada.
You get rid of that artificially drawn line, and you take a look at what that looks like.
It all started after this smiley Mar-a-Lago photo op with Justin Trudeau. They're trying to get Donald Trump to back off his tariff threat. Just days later came this post from the president-elect, Trump looking out at an AI-generated image of what appeared to be a Swiss mountain range with the caption, "Oh, Canada." Then a Trump taunt, calling Trudeau governor of the great state of Canada.
When you were there, Donald Trump said, quite frankly, Canada should become the 51st state.
Liberal leaders tried to downplay it.
That was an offhand jocular moment. I don't think it was serious.
But Trump kept going, posting many Canadians want Canada to become the 51st state. I think it's a great idea.
I have opinions, very vulgar and angry opinions about that.
I don't think he's quite there. We're never going to give up our sovereignty.
Belligerent. He's out of control.
After Justin Trudeau resigned, Trump posted if Canada merged with the U.S., there would be no tariffs, taxes would go down, and they would be totally secure. Then, in a press conference just 2 weeks before starting his second term, Trump blasted Canada, accusing it of taking advantage of its relationship with the U.S.
We're spending hundreds of billions a year to protect it. Our military is at their disposal. They should be a state.
He's not going to engage the way that a president normally engages. Treaties and borders are only respected when people respect them, and they can all be out the window when the leader of the most powerful country in the world just wants to ignore them.
What Ottawa initially dismissed as a joke, now seemingly less funny. Trudeau writing after Trump's press conference, there isn't a snowball's chance in hell that Canada would become part of the United States. Trudeau won't be negotiating with Trump for long. It's unclear who will. Many Canadians still seem able to laugh it all off.
Feels like to me all bark, no bite.
He just likes to be heard.
And Trump's making sure he is heard, posting this map, Canada draped in red, white, and blue, just hours after Trudeau's response.
Canadians should be really worried that the President of the United States doesn't respect Canadian sovereignty, and that we're going to have 4 years of this.
So Ellen Morrow breaking down Donald Trump's emerging rhetoric. Now let's go deeper. Let's talk about what he is up to, how Canada should respond. Gordon Giffen is a former U.S. ambassador to Canada. David McNaughton is a former Canadian ambassador to the U.S. Gentlemen, you both understand diplomatic minefields when you see one. So thank you for helping us understand the path through here. Ambassador McNaughton, if we can start with you, there will be some people who will say, look, Trump is just saying things, don't take the bait. They'll question whether we should even be having this conversation about Trump potentially wanting to take over this country. Do you think this is more than just saying things?
Well, there's no question that the rhetoric that President Trump is using is more extreme than I've ever heard him use before. I think, he senses some weakness in Canada at the present moment where, with Prime Minister stepping down, we've got going to have a leadership, there's going to be an election. And usually when he senses weakness, he tries to press the advantage. I think he may have made a bit of a mistake on this one, because I think the reaction of Canadians is going to be, rather than to divide us, it's probably going to pull us together at a time when we need to quite vigorously. So I think he might have miscalculated by using such extreme rhetoric.
You know, to the both of you, did you ever think you'd see the day where we would be talking about this?
Not me. That never occurred to me.
No, me neither. I lived through a fair bit of Trump's rhetoric in Washington, but this is something that's reached a new level.
I'm trying to like cast away sort of the language here and try to figure out what he actually wants. Ambassador Giffen, do you think he actually wants to acquire Canada, or are we talking about just taking a page from his book Art of the Deal, right, where he advocated, look, open up a previously decided issue just so you can create leverage, so you can eventually get something else that you want?
Yeah, I think it's the latter. And David said he may have miscalculated. I don't think he's calculated at all. I think this is a spontaneous type of declaration that he's made 2 or 3 times now that he's having some fun with. He's getting a rise out of it, and he's having fun with it. But I do think that at its core, he's got some economic issues that he's got in his head that he wants to advance. And I think the final product is going to be, in his mind, using this kind of bombast, if you will, or negotiating tactic to drive towards more of an economic outcome. And frankly, it starts with the whole defense spending issue that's been current for quite some time. And then he's building on that with the trade deficit. So I think it's all about the money.
Mm-hmm. Isn't it always often about the money there? Ambassador McNaughton, you were part of the team renegotiating NAFTA with Trump last time around. How similar is this to the rhetoric you heard and the tactics you encountered then?
Well, you know, he said early on that he was going to rip up NAFTA and that it was a bad deal, the worst deal ever. And you know, I remember the first conversation I had with Bob Lighthizer. He said that the NAFTA deal was the second worst deal that the U.S. had ever made. And I said, what's the first? And he said the Canada-U.S. auto pact. So, you know, there was a fair bit of that. But, you know, what happened, you know, the first go-around was, you know, in the first instance, I think Sonny Perdue, who was the Ag Secretary, went to President Trump and explained to him that actually there was a fair bit of, you know, the U.S. agricultural industry that relied on exports to Canada, and you know, I think Trump's going on and on and on about this at the present moment, and I don't think there's anybody sitting beside him saying to him, "Well, hold on for a second, you know, we should don't do too much rhetoric," and so he's feeling pretty full of himself. He's just won a big victory, and he sees Trudeau having to step down and everything else. So he's using bombast and rhetoric.
Interesting. You know, after his comments today, Prime Minister Trudeau tweeted, and I'm sure you've seen it now, there isn't a snowball's chance in hell that Canada would become part of the United States. I mean, it's enticingly tough language. We're seeing Ontario Premier Doug Ford go on Fox tonight. Ambassador Giffen, do you think any of this makes a whit of difference?
Well, I do think being resolute in a response about the political statements that the president-elect has made, meaning somehow bringing the two countries together as a political matter. I think being resolute in the face of that, and by the way, the snowball thing is pretty good for Canada in January. It sort of makes sense. But in the final analysis, I don't know if I agree with David. I think there's some deals that'll be made, and I think already the Canadian response to some of this bombast has been productive, meaning devoting more resources to the border. Frankly, if I were in charge, I'd make the 2% commitment and make it to NATO, or the 2%. of GDP spending on defense as part of NATO, I'd make that commitment and make it much more accelerated than Canada's talked about, to just take that one off the table.
Well, with a prorogued parliament, everything gets tougher. Ambassador Giffen, Ambassador McNaughton, thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Coming up, a devastating earthquake in Tibet and the search for survivors.
The sooner that people can reach people who could be stuck, the better a chance of survival.
We'll break down what makes the rescue so difficult. The long fault lines in the shadow of the Himalayas, shifting plates beneath Tibet, triggering tremors above.
Builds up year after year after year until after a few hundred years we have huge earthquakes that cause loss of life.
The buckling surface and the deadly aftermath. Andrew Chang, host of About That, looks at the frequency of Tibet's seismic activity and explains why the magnitude of this quake is rare.
I'm going to show you the inside of a supermarket in Tibet, but it's not the supermarket that matters. It's the fact that everything inside it is shaking. The interior is rattling apart and everybody's running for cover. That's the inside view of an earthquake that just hit. But now look at the outside view. Roads cleaved apart, homes reduced to piles of rock. At least 100 dead due to this 7.1 magnitude quake. According to Chinese state media, Xi Jinping has called for an all-out search and rescue response. But Tibet is a hell of a place to rescue. It's one of the most punishing places on Earth, home to the highest peak on the planet, geologically unstable, cold, hard to reach. There is nothing easy about this rescue mission.
If you look at a lot of different earthquakes in this region, the buildings are usually made of brick. When you have the shaking from the seismicity, they're more easily to collapse, and that just causes much more devastation. The sooner that people can reach people who could be stuck or under rubble, the better a chance of survival.
Tibet is prone to earthquakes. And if you've ever wondered why, you might first ask a different question. How did all those Himalayan mountains there form in the first place? Well, that region is what you get when India and Asia collide. Because millions of years ago, the Indian tectonic plate actually used to be part of a different continent. Over the course of many lifetimes, it drifted north. And when it hit the Eurasian plate, that collision created this upswell of Earth, literally creating mountains in real time. And what we now know as Tibet lies on this major geological fault line, where those plates are still rubbing together. That creates earthquakes, and believe it or not, is still causing some of those world's highest mountain peaks, including Mount Everest itself, to grow even higher still.
So Mount Everest is said to rise a couple of millimeters each year due to the pressure that builds up between earthquakes. And it builds up year after year after year until after a few hundred years, we have huge earthquakes that cause loss of life.
The epicenter of this earthquake was about 100 kilometers from Mount Everest. That rattled base camp, forcing many people to evacuate. But according to Chinese state TV, there are also a handful of communities within just 5 kilometers of the epicenter. And only about 20 kilometers away is the major city of Shigatse, which is considered one of the holiest cities in Tibet, home of the second highest authority in Tibetan Buddhism, the Panchen Lama, second only to the Dalai Lama himself.
These are remote communities. They are very high, so they're about 4,000 kilometers high.
According to Chinese state media, within a 200-kilometer radius of this epicenter, there have been 29 other earthquakes of at least a magnitude 3 in just the last 5 years. But the one that just happened was the most powerful. This geology of Tibet does make life more difficult. Tibet is often called the roof of the world because of how high it is. The average altitude in the area around the epicenter of the earthquake, around 4,200 meters, or nearly 14,000 feet above sea level. That creates two problems. One is in how rugged and mountainous and remote the area is.
One of the things that's really logistically challenging is earthquakes on this order and this magnitude tend to generate not just destruction from crumbling buildings, but also landslides that can block roads.
In many places on Earth, when there's an earthquake, you see cranes, excavators, bulldozers cleaning up. What we're seeing in the affected parts of Tibet are rescuers often digging by hand. Now, the buildings are smaller there, yes, but it goes without saying, supplying a relief operation in a remote region is a logistical challenge. And another thing that has to have been a consideration is that this is all happening in a part of the world where just breathing is hard.
When you're at this elevation, what they say in Tibet is everyone moves slowly because oxygen is so thin and so rare.
When Tibet was hit by a major earthquake in 2010, thousands of rescue workers were dispatched to help. But they came mainly from low-lying areas and then had to ascend to the disaster zone. Well, researchers in Beijing wanted to study them, and the results were immediate. Of 78 people measured, most experienced chest tightness. Nearly half headaches and dizziness. Nausea and insomnia were less common, but sudden vomiting was the most common symptom in those who were evacuated early. That was a big problem. In all, more than a third of the team was diagnosed with acute mountain sickness. About 1 in 5 team members was evacuated early because of it. And a big chunk, more than a third of those early evacuations, happened right away, just a day after arriving on the scene. Now, the key with this rescue is going to be China's ability to rely on those who are already acclimatized to the altitude.
There is a large military presence in Tibet, in the Chinese province of Xizang, and I think that there are plenty of rescuers on hand who are already acclimatized to the altitude.
But every earthquake poses its own set of challenges.
The images coming out of the remote area do show some extensive damage. Piles of rubble and broken bricks all across roads as storefronts just collapsed.
In this latest quake, according to Chinese media, some 1,500 rescue workers have been deployed, including hundreds of soldiers. Some 22,000 items of disaster relief are also on the way, things like tents and quilts, for example. And the Chinese Air Force, too, has reportedly joined the effort. But searching for survivors in sub-zero temperatures at high altitude in a remote, rugged region, Adrian, that is the definition of a battle against the odds.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. Coming up, a precious memory thought to be lost back where it belongs.
I haven't seen them for over 56 years.
A couple lays their eyes on their wedding photos for the very first time. That's next in our moment. What a great picture. That is a photo of Barry and Margaret Sharman's wedding from 1968. And until a recent series of happy coincidences, this is a photo they had never seen. So, purchased at a garage sale, taken to a local museum, someone recognized people in that picture, and the photos eventually found their way back to the Sharmans in Penticton, British Columbia on Christmas Eve. So tonight, the unexpected Christmas surprise is our moment.
I can't believe, almost 57 years has gone by. We were married July 20th, 1968. And the photographer in Armstrong had taken our pictures, but we were never, ever able to pick them up because we didn't have any money.
We haven't seen them for over 56 years.
Well, I got a text from my girlfriend, Sandra Farnick, and she said in the text, "Margie, have you got your original wedding pictures?" And I said, "No, Sandy." She says, "Well, I'm looking at them." So I got them Christmas Eve.
She cried a lot of happy tears. And then she was just beside herself with joy.
We looked so young.
She took a beautiful wedding picture, and I was just so happy that she picked me. And 56 years later, plus, we're still going strong. So I guess you made the right choice.
Never would have dreamt
No.
we would have the life we did.
We've just been so fortunate.
This is amazing. Beautiful pictures, a great couple, a notion of gratitude. Margaret and Barry Sharman wanted us to publicly make sure that Sandra was thanked publicly. Sandra was a bridesmaid at that wedding. She and Margaret were friends from their grade 2 classroom, and that is an enduring friendship. From all of us at The National, thank you for being with us. You can watch anywhere, anytime on the free CBC News app and subscribe to The National's YouTube channel. I'm Adrienne Arsenault. Take care.